Visuals also, of course, suggesting a larger message, the fact that countries like America and Australia and other global powers recognize Prime Minister Modi's, influence, that he is a popular leader, he is a mass leader, that his words matter. And on issues such as these, yoga or other issues, if he can actually bring people together. So whether they are diaspora events in various countries, including in America, the last one saw a massive number of people turning up, and there are diaspora events here as well. The administrations in America understand that Prime Minister Modi is a popular figure.
Well, yes, of course. In fact, there have been various nuggets to share about it. The Australian Prime Minister calling the Indian Prime Minister as the boss. Just yesterday here, local time, we saw Elon Musk saying that he's a big fan of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. So these small gestures or comments are something that are much talked about. Now, everyone will be focusing as to how President Biden embraces or greets the Indian Prime Minister, a warm hug as we have seen in the past, a warm handshake, or what comment he makes for the Indian Prime Minister is something that will be closely watched. But essentially, the Indian Prime Minister's popularity has grown leaps and bounds globally. We have seen the leaders liking him. Papua New Guinea, for example, was the latest. The Prime Minister touched his feet in a very traditional Indian gesture, and speaking to WION, he talked about how he sees the Indian Prime Minister as a global statesman. In fact, the Yoga Day at the United Nations headquarters is not new. It has been celebrated almost every year since it came into being in 2014. But this time the popularity has seen another layer being added with the Indian Prime Minister adding his own popularity. We have seen all the diplomats, in fact, behind me doing yoga along with the Indian Prime Minister, and he's joined by none other than the President of the United Nations General Assembly, the Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations. In fact, the Secretary General of the United Nations would have also joined this affair, this event, but he is right now in Paris for the Global Financial Pact meet, where of course India is also represented by its finance minister. So all in all, it's a packed next few days, and this will see a visible manifestation of how the relationship has transformed between India and US. And as the Indian Foreign Secretary described the relationship as, it's a very good relationship, and this visit is being dubbed as a milestone visit, given that this is a official state visit, the first official state visit of the Indian Prime Minister to United States.
Absolutely, the first state visit by Prime Minister Modi. The relationship has moved leaps and bounds between these two countries. It has in a sense also been fastened, this relationship coming together and closer by the Russia-Ukraine war. Notwithstanding India's support or equidistance on the Russia-Ukraine war, the US has made its position clear that it continues to see India as an important player, particularly in the Indo-Pacific. There are defense deals that are going to be signed. There's technology transfer that America was not willing to do earlier, but is now on the cards. And there's also business on the table. But it's also, this visit is also, Siddhant, in many ways an attempt to minimize some of those differences, reduce them, particularly on oil imports and things, and also the transfer of technology that America was so hesitant about just 2 years ago is something that is happening now.
Well, yes, of course, every substantive relationship has its own set of differences as well, and India-US relationship is no different. Russia, of course, is an example of how divergent India and United States can be. United States almost on a regular basis has been condemning Russian actions in Ukraine, while India, of course, has maintained a position, a neutral position, but as the Indian Prime Minister has put it in his interview to Wall Street, that it's a position for the peace. The Indian Prime Minister calling for dialogue and diplomacy. India, of course, has been balancing its relationship when it comes to Kremlin and White House, but India has a time-tested relationship with the Russians, and this is something that India has been publicly talking about several times last century. For example, the Indian side was supported by the Soviet Union several times, especially in 1971 war, the war of aggression by West Pakistan in East Pakistan. But essentially, this is past. India is looking forward to a future, building a new future, and a future where there is diversification for its needs, especially the defense needs. Now, the India-Russia relationship is based on pillars like space, now energy, and of course defense one. But if you look at the relationship between India and the United States, it's much more divergent in terms of not only defense, now of course space as well, but also people to people relationship. It forms the substratum of this relationship. If you ask any Indian where they would like to go, many would like to say that they would like to go to United States and make United States their home. Not that many won't be keen to Russia, but there will be a preference for United States. If you go to for a visa, in fact, that you can see in Delhi, you'll see a very long line in front of the US embassy. That might not be the case when it comes to the Russian embassy, and that of course is again a visible manifestation of how the people to people relationship has been transformed. So there are several divergences. Both sides are aware of it, and the focus of course is to minimize the divergent issues and make sure that there are convergences between the two sides, and we will see a celebration of sorts when it comes to convergences during this visit of the Indian Prime Minister as he travels to Washington later today.
Right, absolutely. And if you're just tuning in, these are visuals coming in from New York, where Prime Minister Modi is leading the Yoga Day celebrations at the UN headquarters in New York on the 9th International Yoga Day. The event is seeing the participation of top UN officials, envoys across the world, and prominent individuals. The UN General Assembly Chief, the Deputy Secretary General are also attending this session. Every year, Yoga Day is celebrated on June 21st worldwide. The concept of Yoga Day was introduced by Prime Minister Modi himself during his 2014 address to the UN General Assembly. Since then, yoga has gained a lot of popularity worldwide. And as we said, this is the 9th year since the UN recognized June 1st as the International Yoga Day. And Prime Minister Modi, of course, has a packed schedule there in the United States. It starts in New York and ends in Washington, where we will see a busy diplomacy. And Prime Minister Modi has really, in a sense, had a relentless effort to position India as a global power player and also as a global soft power with, yoga. And small gestures, routines shared have really sort of made yoga a popular event and activity worldwide. Over 180 countries now have embraced this Yoga International Day every year. This morning, the Prime Minister met business leaders. He's wearing several hats there in America. He's meeting business leaders. He is leading a Yoga Day celebration, and he will be flying out to Washington later tonight. And there, of course, he will be hosted by President Biden and his wife, Jill Biden, for a state dinner. He will also be addressing the U.S. Congress for the second time. There will be diaspora events. He will also be co-hosted for a dinner by Kamala Harris, the Vice President, as well as the U.S. Secretary of State. America is increasingly according more and more importance to India as a viable partner in Asia, in the Indo-Pacific. But when asked about whether India was being seen as a counter to China, John Kirby, the strategic head of communications, said it was a no. But India in itself was an important partner for America. In the last 2-3 years, or over the last decade, this relationship has grown from strength to strength, whether it is in trade or in defense.